All right. I think we are live. Welcome. 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 You are here with Speedrun Seeds. My name is Ben. I am the head breeder here, and we do this every week. If this is your first time here, I say this every week. We talk about a different subject. We'll bring up some questions. Oh, nope. Nope. Second time in a row that's happened. Still getting used to the YouTube streaming. I will get a hang of it eventually. But I think this is way better. We were streaming on Facebook every week, and I think everyone seems to be enjoying this a lot better. I'm seeing the chats come in more smoothly, seeing them when they actually come in instead of looking back after and noticing that I missed like 30% of them. So that's always good. So this week we're going to be talking about autoflower nutrition versus photoperiod nutrition, and it's kind of a carryover from last week. We just ran out of time to really get deeper into that subject last week. I know it is Easter Sunday today, and I have to assume I'm not somebody who's ever really celebrated Easter, but I would assume that there's like a dinner that people do maybe. So I'm expecting a lot of people to catch this on the backside and watch it in the recorded form rather than being with us here tonight. But yeah, so a few announcements. The nutrient line. What's up, Sean? How you doing? The nutrient line that we've been talking about forever is available for pre-order now. It is up on the website. I know I said it was probably going to happen after the live stream tonight, but don't worry about it. We put up plenty of stock for this pre-order. So what's up? It says True 84600. I'm here, bro, straight from Kentucky. What's up? What's going on, man? Kentucky. I've spent some time in Kentucky. Yeah. So Nutrient Line is up on the website now, and I'm going to be talking about it, devoting a little bit of a portion to it of our live streams every week here to talk about the Nutrient Line, answer some questions about it. We're looking at just about right at the end of the month where that's going to ship, and we're just giving people a chance to lock down theirs now, because we will run out of pre-order stock eventually. So that's something that if you do want to grab one and make sure that you have one locked in for when they do start shipping, definitely a good idea to grab them now. But yeah. So this is something that we've been waiting to talk about, waiting to release for a long time. The nutrient line is a conventional nutrient line, so that means it is not organic, and it's a little bit of a merger between a liquid nutrient line and a salt nutrient line. So, and what I mean when I say that is you buy a liquid nutrient line, you can measure out, your application rate, 15 milliliters per gallon or whatever it happens to be. You pour it into your water, and that's how you use a liquid nutrient line. But I'm sure you guys all know that. but as far as purchasing a liquid nutrient line online or shipping them to grow stores where you might get them, there's a lot involved with diluting a nutrient down to the point where they can make an application rate of 15 mils per gallon or so, and providing that to a customer, whether it's being shipped to their house or it's being shipped to a grow store and you're going to get it there. What you end up doing is buying 90% water, which for a liquid nutrient, that's just how it has to be. You want to use it as a liquid, so they've got to add a liquid, and that's always water. And it ends up being a very big jug of water with some nutrients there, about 10% of it or so at the bottom. Mixed throughout. So that is something that we saw as a little bit of an issue. We always at our facility we run salt nutrients. We run nutrients that are not diluted down, that are condensed into a salt form, and then they get dissolved into our stock tanks, and that is what's used to fertigate and feed our plants. And fertigation, if you're not familiar with that phrase or that word, it is making a highly concentrated nutrient solution and then using it's essentially a little bit of a pump to pump a certain amount of nutrient solution into your watering line every certain number of gallons. So you can set your application rate on the fertigation system, and it'll pump, let's say you're pumping 100 gallons of water out to your canopy or your grow. It'll put in, the right amount of fertilizer for 100 gallons of water. And that's how a lot of larger farms feed their plants that way. Instead of mixing a stock tank, instead of mixing up fertilizers, batch mixing is what we call that, in large tanks, they will install a fertigation system and have a much more concentrated version of their liquids. So that is kind of taking that from the commercial side is a little bit kind of the concept that we put together when making our nutrient line. So the way that we did this was we have a salt nutrient line that we've been building for years. We've identified through hundreds of thousands of plants grown at our facility and thousands and thousands and thousands of leaf tissue samples taken and then analyzed at the lab for nutrient content. We've gone through all of the data. You know, we've done this so many times that we've identified very precise nutrient inputs for autoflowers, and especially, you know, for our strains, we know that they are the best possible thing that they can be fed. So we have identified that feeding program, and in order to get it to people at home, we created a salt nutrient line where instead of having to weigh out and mix salts into a large container of water, you just pour the salts into your bottle that we're providing with the nutrient kit. So you pour a packet of salts in there, you pour the whole thing in. We measured it for you guys already. Each of the packets has a different weight depending on the week, and they have a different formulation depending on the week. So you pour that packet in, you fill it up to 32 ounces, and you have yourself a liquid nutrient that you can use like a liquid nutrient that you would buy in a big bottle. But the benefit is you're not buying all the water that comes with it, and it's able to get to you for a lot more efficiently, and it's cheaper. You don't have to pay for high shipping costs if you're looking to get like a 5-gallon jug of something. That's it's a lot of water being shipped. So that's the concept of the format, the form of how that nutrient line is sent to you. It's a liquid nutrient line without the water, and that's the kind of the concept behind it. And it makes it really easy. We have the bottles where all you have to do is squeeze the bottle, and it measures out the right amount for you, and there you go. So yeah, and aside from that, I got some. Let's see. Joe says probably going to get the organic line as well, just to try them side by side. Yeah, Joe. So we have the organic line coming out very soon after the conventional, and that one's going to be a traditional liquid. So the organic line is not going to be a shipped as a solid and you add water and you turn it into a liquid. That's just going to be a straight liquid organic nutrient line. And we will be making a traditional organic liquid available too for people. We will blend it for you. We will make the liquid nutrient line. We'll do all the dilution and all that stuff for you guys. And if you want something that's just like a simple one-shot thing, we will be making the liquid version of the conventional available as well. So that's those are all the things that we will have coming out pretty soon. And this is just the first that you're going to see from us. We're focusing on autoflower nutrition and great autoflower nutrition and great autoflower genetics. Like that's what we're doing. And that's a huge part of our whole history here and what's brought us to this point. And we feel like we can do more to help you guys get those 1 pound yields at home, or to get those highest possible returns and the best phenotypic expression that you can get from your plants. We feel responsible to help you guys get there, because it's something that we've done for a long time, especially with our genetics. And we know that if you guys are to follow that system, we will get you some of the best results you've ever seen from an autoflower plant. So super excited about that. Let's see. Yeah, I think I mentioned we're shipping at the end of the month on those. So pre-orders are starting now. You know, the pre-orders are open and shipping will happen at the end of the month. I'll talk a little bit about the strain that's in there. It's called Final Boss. And that strain is something that we've been working on that for about 2 years. I think I mentioned on the last stream that we did, it is one of the strains that we were going to release as one of our first strains that came out way back when the Granite Haze F4 and the Pound Dog came out. The Final Boss was going to be one of those that was getting released really early. And we all kind of talked about it. And we were like, we need to save this strain for a real special thing, whatever that's going to be, whether it's our like 1 year anniversary or whatever it is. We needed to save it for something huge because it is so good. It's just one of the best autoflower strains out there, period. And so, yeah, we saved, Final Boss wasn't called Final Boss back then, but we saved that one. We held on to it for up until now. We all even knew. We didn't have to really talk too much about it. We just kind of knew, okay, this is where it has to go. This is what it's perfectly designed to do, is to be part of this starter kit. and we're super excited, just excited about the nutrients, really excited about the genetics, and to see you guys grow those. So that one, we posted some pictures of it on the website, and I'll post those pictures on the Facebook group and the Instagram as well. So yeah. And I saw a question. Let's see. Paul says, "Hey Ben, I've been wanting to run autos in my 8-site drain to waste setup in 5-gallon cocoa. Currently run General Hydro Advanced Trio for photos. Will your newts fit my setup?" Absolutely, Paul. Yeah, that's exactly what it's designed really to do. Well, it's designed to fit a lot of different setups, but that is such an ideal setup to run what this is. So what he means when he says drain to waste is that it's not like a recirculating system. He is watering to the point of runoff, and that one runoff is going into a drain somewhere, and that's what drain to waste means, guys. If you didn't know that, but yeah, and so you've got a 8-site drain away in 5-gallon cocoa, that's exactly what this is set up for. So we set up the nutrient line to run in 5-gallon pots. Like that was the average that we chose, because we know some people run in 7s, a lot of people run in 3s. So we kind of just averaged it out at around 5 gallons, and it's designed to fully get you through a run of 4 plants, which is usually the max that people are allowed to grow in their houses in most states that allow growing. But there's extra beyond that. So we made sure we overshot that, and we really overcalculated the number of gallons of water that you would need to get through a run like that. So that it's designed to make sure that you're good and covered on a full run. And we will also, when the nutrient line actually goes up for sale, we will be making just the packets available as well. So if you have a larger grow, or if you have more than just what that kit covers, you will be able to order an add-on that will have all of that. It'll also have an add-on for your auxiliary stuff, like we call it. So your silica, your microbes, will have microbe packets available. We're going to have a humic acid product available, a kelp product available, and we also might be adding a very specific type of foliar spray in powder form. And that, again, be able to have that available. And if we do end up doing the foliar spray, which we're definitely leaning towards at this point, we're going to be including that with a spray bottle, and it'll work just like the other products, where you just pour the packet in, add your water, and you've got a foliar spray that you can use as often as, hey, Purple Hippie, how you doing? As often as it's a lot of people spray every day. A lot of people do foliar sprays every day. Some people do it a few times a week. We recommend at least 3 times a week for doing foliar sprays, especially with the one that we are almost definitely going to be adding into this line. It's designed to infuse a lot of nitrogen through a foliar application. So it really helps with that rapid vegetative growth stage that autoflowers go through. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight is how to facilitate that rapid veg phase with autos, and how it's different than photoperiods. So see if I missed any of these questions about nutrients. If you guys have any questions about the nutrient line, definitely throw them in the chat there, and I'll definitely answer those as we're going, or before we finish here. But yeah, so autoflower nutrition. This is a question I get a lot of, because I'll say a lot on social media and in the Facebook group, and wherever I'm happen to be talking to people about this. I will talk a lot about how autoflowers have different nutritional requirements than photoperiods do. And to a lot of people, that's a surprise to hear. It's a surprise to find out that, okay, they're both cannabis plants, and they both have a veg stage, and they both have a flowering stage. What's different about them? And that is, I believe, one of the most crucial things when growing autoflowers. And there's other really important factors when you're trying to replicate the results that we get at our facility at home. There's a lot of important things, but I believe that we feel that the most important thing, beyond just having great genetics, is having a nutrient system and nutrient inputs that will help your plants get to that rapid growth that allows you to get those giant yields. And that is one of the major differences between autoflowers and photoperiods, is that your photoperiod has a vegetative and a flowering stage, especially we're talking about growing indoors here. The photoperiod switches into its vegetative stage, or into its flowering stage, when you make the decision to turn the light cycle from 18:6 or whatever you're running your light cycle at to 12:12. So 12 hours on, 12 hours off, your photoperiod is going to start flowering, and that stimulates the plant to produce flowering hormones, like florigen. There's flowering hormones that change the plant's biochemistry and behaviors to go from vegetative growth to the fruiting stage, where it produces flowers and it moves into that cycle of its life. So autoflowers, they also go through that same change, but they are not programmed to do it based on an external event. They have an internal clock. And because autoflowers have an internal clock, the change from vegetative to flowering is not an instant hormonal change, or it's not instant with photoperiods. That takes about a 1 week transition from when you switch the light cycle to be really, to call it in flowering. And with photoperiods, I mean, sorry, with autoflowers, that's a change that occurs over a number of weeks. You start to see the pre-flowering happen. You start to see pistils, the little white hairs, forming at the pre-flower sites, and you see that start to form, and the nodes get a little bit closer together. You get more of a stacking structure, is what people call that, and you will see a gradual change in your autos going from vegetative to photoperiod. And it's really it's looks very similar. It can look very similar from an outside perspective to, okay, these plants are both flowering and they're both doing the same thing, meaning a photoperiod and an autoflower. However, with the autoflower, your vegetative growth doesn't stop when it moves into flower, and it doesn't necessarily have a flowering stretch like a photoperiod does. An autoflower plant has what we call the stretch. It's not the flowering stretch, it's the stretch that happens in the first 40 to 50 days, depending on how long your plant's going to run total. 40 to 50 days of your autoflower plant growing. It second half of that is always an extremely rapid vegetative stage. And if it's being supplied with the right nutrients, then it will always grow as big as it possibly can in the container that it's in. So that is with autoflower feeding. It's something where there are a lot of nutrient companies that have great nutrient lines. There's excellent nutrient lines out there, but the programs that are sold or provided with those nutrient lines, your feeding program, your feeding schedule is provided with those, is not designed for autoflowers, and it's not designed to support that very rapid vegetative growth phase where the plant is going to grow extremely large compared to what it was before, and then it will move into the later flowering stages. But that requires very heavy nitrogen input and very heavy calcium input and extremely heavy potassium input versus what other nutrient lines might provide, assuming that you're growing a photoperiod and switching it to flower and then switching the nutrients. And you guys have probably noticed that your flowering nutrients are always going to be higher in phosphorus and potassium, and they'll be lower in nitrogen. And that it's an important distinction to make, and it's always very important to supply higher potassium and higher phosphorus in flower. But what is missed with the photoperiod feeding schedules is that your nitrogen often gets cut back to a point where your autoflower plants are not able to grow as quickly as they want to in that flowering stage. They're not able to photosynthesize as efficiently because they're not getting enough nitrogen. They're not being provided the amount that they need because they're still growing at a really rapid rate. And a photoperiod at that point might be kind of at the back end of its flowering stretch, where photoperiod plants still need nitrogen in their flowering stretch. So autoflowers need, for a more extended period of time, they need that nitrogen input. And that's something that a lot of feeding programs miss out on. And that's why we've included that in the nutrient line, because we've done this so many thousands of times. I think we were doing the math the other day, and we're coming up on 300,000 autoflowers in the past few years. And that all of that has shown us the same thing. Growing all of those plants, we've come to the same conclusion for every single strain that we've grown, which is these plants need certain things differently than photoperiods do. And one of those things, one of the biggest things, is higher nitrogen input later into what you would call the flowering stage, which is, I'm going to air quotes here, because yes, it's the flowering stage, and yes, that's when the plant flowers, but it's a blended thing. So if this is your veg stage and this is your flowering stage for photoperiod, autoflowers are more like that. You've got an overlap here of those phases kind of turning into, moving away from veg, moving into flower, but it's not a direct, switch. And that is one of the biggest things that you have to take into consideration when you're formulating a feeding schedule for autoflowers, is how do we cater to that behavior? How do we cater to that gradual switch from vegetative to flowering? See a question here. Trevor says, don't get paid till the 19th. Do you think it will still be available to pre-order? And is there enough? We think, what's today, the 9th? We think we've made enough of these. We think that we've done enough to make sure that we're not going to sell out too quickly. Trevor, it's a hard question to answer, because I always think the genetics are not going to sell out as fast as they do. We've, like, multiple times we've doubled how many packs of genetics that we've put out there, and they still sell out in like 2 hours. So I would say more people are going to buy genetics at the moment than are going to buy the nutrient line, until they see how the nutrient line works, and maybe until they hear a little bit more from me about it. So I think it's not going to be as like hot of a thing as the genetics, but again, it's really hard to know that. Trevor, send me a DM after the stream here, and we'll talk. I'll make sure that we'll set one aside from you, or for you. I mean, we can definitely do that. I'll put a note on it, and we'll make sure we have one for you. So yeah, I was coming to the point in the conversation where Travis would say, bro, you can't give your plants too much nitrogen in flower because it makes them all leafy, and you don't even get buds when you do that. Like, you don't even get good weed when you've got too much nitrogen in flower, bro. Like, you can't do that. And not right, Travis. Travis, you're wrong about that. So in some ways you're right when you say too much, but Travis's definition of too much nitrogen is different than the correct definition of too much nitrogen. And supplying not enough nitrogen, Travis would say, bro, like, you're looking for a fade. You want your plants to just turn like purple and yellow at the end. That fade just gives you better weed, man. Like, it just gives you better trichromes. Trichromes gives you better terpenes. Like, you just get way better weed if you let your plant fade. Again, so a fade is nutrient deficiency. And this is something that is a controversial thing that I've said before, but I will continue to say that your fade that you're seeing is a nutrient deficiency. And you can purposefully induce some nutrient deficiency to get better results from your plants. And in some way, yes, Travis is right. Stress, even nutrient stress, can cause your plant to switch into a life-saving measure. And in that case, the life-saving measure for your cannabis plants, the way that they respond if they think that there's something environmentally bad happening, they think to themselves, and we think in thoughts, humans think in thoughts, and plants think in chemicals. So when something bad happens to a plant, chemicals are produced, signaling happens within the plant that tells it, you are experiencing stress, you might die, and if you don't want your genetic line, all the plants that have, bred themselves together through thousands of years to get you here, then you need to create some seeds, or you need to collect some pollen. Those two things are extremely important for a plant to continue its generational line and to move those genetics into the next generation. So how do the in late flower, or in flower, how do these female plants respond? They produce more resin and they produce more terpenes. They produce terpenes for a bunch of different reasons. All these terpenes have different purposes for the actual cannabis plant, not just the effect that it has on you, but the purpose that the plant produces it is there's a bunch there's some of them are insect repellents. There's all sorts of different things that terpenes do for the plant. And then it produces more resin and more trichomes because it is trying to collect pollen out of the air. And if pollen can land on the plant and it sticks there, then that plant has a better chance of being pollinated and creating seeds. So that's one of the major reasons that plants produce resins like that is to be a little pollen trap, and it's a nice sticky flower. You'll see that in a lot of different plants, not just cannabis. Plants will produce resins to keep or to trap that pollen from the air. So in some ways, yeah, Travis, you're right about that. You're right about the fact that stress can induce some responses in your plant that can increase your resin production and get you what might be considered better product. What's up, Ian? How you doing? So I think we have two Ians here. So the way to look at that, though, from like the scientific perspective, is what can we do to still get that response, to still get the plant to produce as much resin as we possibly can, but also prevent it from needing something that it doesn't have, to prevent it from having some deficiency in whatever nutrient it is that you're talking about, nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium. You want to supply enough of it to do that and maybe induce stress in another way and kind of avoid having the plant, because what you lose when you do induce stress that's causing the plant to put on, what might seem like more resin or more trichomes, what you lose is the plant's ability to photosynthesize and produce yield. So nitrogen is important all the way to the end. Nitrogen is important to keep your plant photosynthesizing. And I've seen plenty of people almost completely remove the nitrogen from the equation when they're in flower. And that is, the plant requires that, and the plant needs to photosynthesize in flowering to produce heavier, bigger buds. It's a huge part of the mechanism, the photosynthetic mechanism that gets you to the point of high yields and really nice flowers. Is it needs that nitrogen to do that. And that is something that we've paid really close attention to in this nutrient line, is how much nitrogen are we providing until the end. And for us, we the feeding schedule is a recommended feeding schedule. People can flush if they feel like they want to. We don't recommend any like extended flush. There's no purpose to try to wash nutrients out of the soil before you harvest. And Travis has something to say. Bro, if you don't flush your soil, like, you can taste the nutrient, you can taste the fertilizer in the plant. Like, I've smoked weed and it tasted just like fertilizer, bro. I always flush for at least 2 weeks. Flush for 2 weeks, get all those fertilizers out of the plant, and it's gonna make your shit so much better. Your ash is gonna burn white. It's so much better, bro. And the issue with that kind of thinking is that plants do not take up the fertilizers that you're giving them in the way that you might think. Plants, their roots are not straws, okay? So plants don't just slurp up fertilizer and it goes up to the leaves and it feeds the leaves. Plants take in ions, and their root hairs are the collectors of those ions. There's areas on the roots that are either positively or negatively charged, and the ions in your liquid fertilizer or your salt nutrient that you're diluting down and adding, those have ions, whether they're anions or cations. This was a trivia question that I asked a long time ago at this point. But the trivia question was, there are two different types of ions. One of them is negative, one of them is positive. Which one is which? Anions or cations. So anions, the way you think of it is a negative ion, a negative ion. So, and then cations are the positive ones. And depending on which nutrient you're looking at, like calcium is a positively charged ion, and that ion attaches to the negatively charged areas on your root hairs, and that ion is what makes it up into the plant. So in order for your plant to take up the nutrients, if they're not provided in a form factor that the plant can take up immediately like that, then something called mineralization has to happen in your soil. And that's where a lot of the microbial activity comes in. The microbes break down your organic molecules because plants cannot take up organic molecules. Plants cannot take in organic molecules. That's something that a lot of people have a misconception about. Organic molecules are great to add to your soil so that they can be mineralized and turned into inorganic molecules that the plants can take up, because that is literally just, like your ions. It's like calcium nitrate breaks into calcium and nitrogen, and that's those two things can be taken up. But your calcium nitrate together like that, it cannot be taken up by the plant. But as soon as it's dissolved in water, it can be taken up because they separate. And then there's other forms of calcium that are not as readily dissolved in water, and they're not as readily taken up by the plant. So that's why a lot of people use calcium nitrate, because it's so easy for the plant to just get it into their system. So because the nutrients themselves don't actually make it into the tissues of the plant, the chemicals that are in the plant are the same from the beginning to the end. There's more of certain ones, but they build up, metals like iron, that builds up in the leaf tissue. Every week, if you were to test your leaf tissues and look at what's in there, your iron is going to steadily increase if you're feeding your plant right, and your zinc will steadily increase. The metals will increase, and then your nutrients, depending on what kind of nutrient it is, it will either be higher or lower depending on the growth phase. And if you're providing enough, then your plant will have the right amount of those nutrients in the leaf tissue. And we're talking elements. We're not talking about fertilizer. We're talking the plant will have elemental, the right amount of nitrogen or the right amount of potassium in the leaf tissue to support the growth that it wants to do. It wants to grow as quickly as possible. So what you might be tasting if you are smoking a plant and it you think, it tastes weird because it wasn't flushed, you're tasting something else. That's not the reason, because the difference is in the amount of the nutrients in the plant tissue if you flush for 10 days and if you harvest while there's still nutrient solution in the soil or in your media. The amounts are not different enough to cause that perceptible taste difference. It's not something they've done research on this, and which I can post in the group. It's not There's not really that much of a difference, honestly. If you flush for 10 days, your plant holds those nutrients. It doesn't lose them. It uses what it's going to use, but it holds the rest and it keeps them close. Like it might not use as much if it's realizing it's not getting any more fresh nutrients. It might start to lock down some of its mechanisms and not use it. So what you're really doing is locking those nutrients into the plant tissue, and the ones that are getting used, you see the mobile nutrients get drained away from the lower leaves and brought up to the new growth. The new growth might still be pretty green, and your lower leaves will be yellow. And that's because your mobile nutrients, the nutrients that are able to move from one part of the plant to another when they're needed, are being pulled away and taken to those most critical growing areas, those fastest growing areas, which are the shoots, the new shoots. So important to remember that just because a plant is flushed does not mean it has less elements or less nutrient in the actual leaf tissue. It is actually a very similar amount when you analyze plant tissue before and after a 10-day flush. It's a very similar amount in that, and not nearly enough for you to be able to burn it and taste the difference. That's not how that works. So, yeah, I think that's a hopefully a relatively succinct description of why feeding till the end is not gonna cause your flower to taste worse or be worse in any way. So, just something to think about there. And let's see, add some more myths, and then, yeah, if you guys have any, like, questions or things that, Travis might have a comment about, any cannabis myths that you've run across, feel free. These streams where I talk about this stuff, feel free to post your things that you've heard in the chat, and I will absolutely go over them. And let's see here. Okay, so another thing, bro, you cannot start feeding your plants at full strength with your full strength nutrients when they're so small. You have to wait until like 3 weeks at least from when you plant to give your plant full strength nutrients, bro. Like, you're gonna kill them. Wrong again, Travis. Starting to get on my nerves a little bit, Travis. Uh, so plants don't necessarily know how old they are versus how much nutrient they're getting. That's not the plant's not aware. It's like, okay, I'm tiny right now. The amount of the nutrient concentration in this soil or in this media is too much for me. It's a physical mechanism. And if you burn your plants, it's because you're starting nutrients that are way too high for the uptake needs of the plant and to the point where it's actually damaging to the plant tissues to provide that much nutrient load to them. What we recommend is most of your feeding schedules that you will get from these nutrient companies and the one that you'll get from us should be designed so that you can start your plant at full strength. We start our plants, like I said, we're pushing up on 300,000 autoflowers at this point. Every single one of them, we have started at full strength nutrient. Well, we've done some experiments, but um, we started at full strength nutrients, which, when in the ag industry, when you talk about the strength of a nutrient, you say how many parts per million of nitrogen. So we'll say we start at 250 parts per million of nitrogen, which is a nice hefty dose of nitrogen, and we start that from the day that they sprout. From as soon as we see those two cotyledons or the two true leaves between those two times, as soon as you see green, even as soon as it comes through, you can absolutely start them at full strength with our nutrient line. You don't have to provide half strength. You don't have to provide quarter strength. I've seen people talk about. You don't need to ease them into it. That's not how the plant works. Whether it's going to burn them or it's not going to burn them, and easing them into it, getting them used to higher nutrient loads isn't necessary. It's not necessary. It might be wasteful to give them, like to water an entire, 25-gallon pot when you've only got a tiny seedling in there. So you can, target your watering in areas where you want the roots to grow toward. But other than that, there's really no science behind needing to ease them into higher nutrient loads. What you do is, and I think the reason that Travis has that misconception is because you do increase your nutrients as the plant gets older because it is using those nutrients so much faster and it requires more. But you don't need to go the other direction and give it less than what it needs at the beginning. If it needs it, it needs it. So the nutrient line that you guys will be getting very soon is designed so that is from the day that the plant is sprouted, from the time that you see it green, or you can start with the first true leaves, however you prefer to do that. We for us, it's not like a major issue if we don't feed them until you see the first two actual, single cannabis leaves, not the cotyledons, the little round, spongier leaves. So that's around when we'll start, but you can absolutely start from the day of sprout. And it's designed to give the plant all of that nutrient load that it needs to grow extremely quickly from that date moving forward. From the day that you give it those nutrients to the end of its life, it will be growing as quickly as it possibly can because it's getting everything that it needs. And whether it uses all of it or not, that's a different question. Once they get bigger, yeah, they will use most or all of that. But when they are tiny like that, targeting your watering or keeping them in a small container and transplanting later on, all good tactics to make sure that your plants are not, you're not wasting fertilizer, which is a concern for sure. And what I wanted to talk about is, so you start your plant with full strength nutrients, but then I will see, bro, bro, you can't spray your plants with nutrients like that, bro. You're gonna burn them. You can't spray your plants with. You're using full strength nutrients, bro. You're gonna kill them. Like, you can't spray them like that. You got to give them like 1/5. You gotta break it down, like 20% of what you would spray what you would feed the roots with, you got that's what you gotta spray on them, dude. And again, burning your plant with the same nutrient load that they're getting in the roots should never be a concern. Your plant should be able to handle the nutrient load on the on the leaves just as well as it handles it on the roots. Now, again, where these misconceptions come from, I think is really important to talk about. And if you're not spraying your plant to the point of runoff, and if your plant is getting big water droplets that are sitting on it and those salts are drying and consistently building up, and you end up with these big salty salt spots, and then you spray it again and if the water gets into that salt that's dried on the leaf, that's when you would start to maybe see burning because you're seeing a very concentrated version of the nutrient that you're spraying it with burning the leaf. But the concern of the nutrients as they are burning your leaves is not a real problem, and if you're feeding with full strength nutrients, a conventional line or an organic line, spraying your plants in the vegetative state with those full strength nutrients is perfectly fine as long as you're keeping an eye on the fact that you're not having salt buildup on the leaves or having, inconsistencies. Trevor asks, how many plant cycles does the starter kit last? Say, how many plants feeding at full strength chart? Yeah, so the starter kit is designed to, at the highest possible estimation of water usage, run 4 plants in 5-gallon pots all the way through till the end, and then still have a little bit of extra. So it's designed to make sure that you get all the way through a full run of 4 plants, which is the legal maximum in a lot of states, which is why we chose that number. But we also estimated it at a very high water usage, way higher than you will use in veg, almost definitely. Unless you're growing outdoors, you could probably get close to that number. But indoors, you're never gonna use as much water as we've calculated for, at the high end for somebody to use if you're running 4 plants or less. So that is what it's designed to do. But I said earlier, Trevor, I think that's before you got here, we are going to be including for sale when the nutrient line actually starts shipping, you'll be able to order a packet set. So if you're growing more plants or if you've got like if you're doing a big outdoor run or if you've got a 10 by 10 tent and you've got way more than 4 plants, you can just order a few more packets and that'll just be, it's you don't have to buy that in a starter kit. You'll be able to order the packets on their own. And then you can just dump another packet into your A bottle or your B bottle and add the water and now you've got a full refill on your nutrients and use as much as you want. Of course, it's yours. Of course, you can use as much as you want. so, so yeah, as far as the foliar spray, always, always feed your plant something that's going to be able to use. And now I will talk about foliar sprays for a minute here because the the point at which a liquid is able to move nutrients into your plant tissue through the leaves is at the stomata. And at the stomata, well, it's also through like the membranes, but at the stomata primarily, your plant is taking in those liquids and it's a very, very tiny entry point for the plant. It's different than the roots, very tiny entry point. So what you need to think about is what am I spraying on my leaves and is the molecule size going to allow it to even enter the leaf tissue? And let's say you have a micronutrient product and you're trying to treat your plant with a foliar spray with micronutrients. But your micronutrients are chelated. Chelated means that there's an organic molecule wrapped around that nutrient ion and it's designed to help the roots take it up and to keep it stable in your soil, but it's not designed to easily pass through into foliar or as a foliar application as it is for the roots. So there are certain things where it doesn't really even make sense to spray them foliar, but nitrogen is one where the foliar spray that is almost definitely going to be available through us as an add-on to the nutrient kit is has a very tiny molecule size and is designed to be taken up very easily in a foliar spray, and you will see the results. Like using this, if you spray half your tent with it, and you don't spray the other half of your tent, you'll see huge results in difference, especially with autoflowers. They really require that extra input, that extra boost to get them to grow as quickly as they want. Um, so, and then, on the subject of full strength nutrients, it, bro, bro, you cannot add salt nutrients to your soil. You're gonna kill your microbes. You have to feed the soil, bro. You can't feed the plant. Stop trying to feed the plant and feed the soil. If you put all those salt nutrients in, it just instantly kills all your mycorrhiza and your bacteria. Wrong. So salt nutrients, the ions, the actual thing that the plant is taking up is the same thing as it is an organic uh, fertilizer. So fertilizer that's organic or fertilizer that's conventional, they're still providing the same anions and cations to your plant. Now, it might have differences in salinity. That's, the EC that you're seeing might be different, the electrical conductivity of the water, and you might have a different rate of availability for a liquid versus organic versus a conventional liquid, or especially your top dress nutrients versus your conventional liquid or your organic liquid. You will see a difference in the rate at which those nutrients become available to your plant, which is important to remember if you're feeding with top dress nutrients. And let's just say it's a 4-4-4, like an all-purpose top dress nutrient. You are not providing 4% of available nitrogen to your root system and 4% of phosphorus and 4% of potassium. Those are not all instantly becoming available to your root system. Those are designed to break down over time. And with top dressing, it's important to refresh that top dress nutrient pretty often. Some people do it 2 times a week. We don't personally do top dress nutrients at our facility, but when I have done it in the past, I would do it, once every 5 days or so. I would refresh those top dress nutrients, mix it in with my fingers, really soak down that soil, and then make sure that there's a really good microbial activity uh, biome happening in there, so those microbes can break down that large organic material into usable inorganic material. So salt nutrients, if they're providing the same ions as organic nutrients, if it's really the same thing at the end of the day, then what what would cause the those nutrients to kill your microbes? And what I said earlier, and what the reason would be, is salinity. That salinity, if you're running your plants at a really high EC and the plant can handle it, if you all your the rest of your setup is right, your environmentals are set up for a high EC, but the microbes might be more sensitive to the salinity in the soil than your actual plant roots. So there is some truth to that. Again, it's where that misconception comes from. It is not the nutrients that kill your microbes. It is the salinity. And if you're having pH issues or temperature issues, that will affect them too. But the thing that people primarily are talking about when they say that a conventional nutrient will harm your microbial activity is the salinity in your soil is what is going to harm that microbial activity. But I would say don't get too attached to your microbes and give them names and try to track their life from beginning to harvest. Just put new ones in, guys. Like if you're running at a high enough salinity, in the mid to high threes even, or some people are getting up to very high with crop steering, which is something I'll talk about with you guys one day here. But they will get into like EC of 5. I've seen, I believe, an EC of 8 in the media before. Um, that is when you will start to kill your microbes, absolutely. And making sure that you hit it with that high EC, and then at the soonest opportunity, when you're able to reduce the EC in that media, you'll add your microbial activity in. But when people who are running crop steering and doing that really high level EC buildup in the media, they are not as concerned about trying to feed their plants with microbes. They're providing everything that the plant needs in plant available forms. So it's not necessarily important to get the best yields and quality when you're doing that style to add the microbes. You guys growing at home, maybe watering once a day instead of 15 times a day, like I've seen with people who are running those systems. Um, that is when microbial activity can really assist, and it can boost the rate at which the organic materials in your soil are becoming available to your plant. And if you're adding things like humic acid, if you're adding things like kelp, if you're adding things that need to be broken down, that microbial activity is really important, and the levels at which you're feeding your plants, especially with our nutrient line, we've done all the calculations, is not gonna harm your microbial activity to any major extent. You know, maybe some of the weaker ones might die off, but you're adding more back in. So if you're hitting it with recharge every week, which is a great one to do, if you're hitting it with your great white or whatever, if you whatever micro product you're using, or if you use ours when that one comes out, you're gonna refresh that every week, and the amount that you might see die because of any salinity in your soil is not affecting the overall microbial health and activity of your soil. So don't be too concerned about killing your microbes with salt, because in your situation, most likely all the people that are here with me right now are not running their electrical conductivity, their EC or ppm. You know, a lot of people look at it as ppm, not running that high enough to really do any damage. So now, talking about the root zone and root health, you guys have seen me talk about it. You've seen us post pictures. I've seen you guys post some great pictures of large pots, 10-gallon, 15-gallon. I think somebody's doing a 25-gallon pot right now, in the Facebook group. And we've talked about getting the highest yields possible from autoflowers and using a really large pot to get there. Now, you'll see some people say, bro, anything over 7 gallons is counterproductive. The roots just keep searching and looking for the pot, and it slows down the growth. You know, they need to hit that pot in order for them to realize that it's time to start growing. Like, anything over 7 gallons is just totally, it's even bad for the plant. It's totally counterproductive. I actually saw that comment on Reddit, I think, like 2 days ago. I had posted a picture of a 15-gallon pot, and somebody commented, "You can't get higher yields with" Hey, Daniel. Good night. Um, "You cannot get higher yields with a 15-gallon pot than you can with a 5-gallon," and they were trying to make their case that a larger pot is actually bad for the plant. It's just completely wrong, and I've heard that enough times so that I feel like it's really important to address. That's completely opposite of how things work. The plant having enough root zone to increase its root mass. The more root mass you have, the more biomass above the soil you're gonna have. So, you know, if you're talking about above soil and below soil, above ground and below ground, the more biomass down there, the more potential for biomass up there. And if you are giving the plant the opportunity to create a much larger root zone and root base, then you are giving the plant the opportunity to use that huge network of roots to grow really big shoots, roots to shoots. That's what we talk about. And so 15-gallon pots, we have the evidence to show. We've done everything the exact same with a 5-gallon and a 15-gallon. And the 5 gallons, you know, if you don't do any training with them and you just feed them what's necessary for them, and maybe here and there pluck a leaf or two off, but for us, we let them go completely naturally because we are selecting for the structure. We're selecting for plants that have as many of the lower lateral branches, as many of those lined up all at the same height as possible, so that all you have to do is tie down that main, I have to call it the apical meristem, pardon me, on the apical the apex, the highest branch, the highest point on the plant. If you tie that down, all the rest of your branches should naturally be at the same height because that's how we bred them and we're continuing to breed them. You're not going to see that in every single plant, obviously, but we're getting there. By the time we get to F12, F13, you'll start to see every single plant having that same structure. So, yeah, a larger pot will get you a larger plant. It's just up to a point. If you go from a 15-gallon to a 25-gallon, you have a point of diminishing return. So, maybe I'll post a graph on the group. I'm gonna draw it out for you, but, that's not gonna be super visible for you. But if you're, you know, let's just say this is your chart, and here is a 30-gallon pot, you know, like a 1-gallon pot, and then if you put it into a 3-gallon, you're gonna go up that much in size. You put it into a 5-gallon, it's gonna go that much. 10-gallon, 15-gallon, well, no, 10, so like 10-gallon, 15-gallon, 25-gallon, 30-gallon, 40, 50. So it evens off. You're gonna get a point of diminishing returns. And Joe, kinda like a bell curve, but there is no drop off at the end. It's not like, you can have a bell curve where the point in the middle is the highest. It is just a plateau on that graph because you get to a certain point, and this plant does not have enough days in its life to use all that soil that you're providing it. So about 15 gallons of soil is what we found to be the maximum, and you could probably accomplish it with good soil health, with good microbial activity, with good mycorrhiza, especially, that's really important. You could probably accomplish what you can accomplish in a 15-gallon pot in a 12 or a 10. Definitely, definitely. But providing a 15-gallon pot makes it simpler and easier to get to that point of a large, really large 1-pound plant, which is at this point what we are building for you guys. We are building you guys 1-pound plants in your tents at home. That is our end goal here. Joe says 25 gallons of soil sounds expensive in one pot. Yeah, it depends where you're getting your soil for sure. But that is a lot. It's a lot of soil for one pot. If you're reusing your soil every year and you have extra, you're just gonna reuse it again. But yeah, no, it's a lot of soil. So, and it's not necessary really. You're gonna see that point of diminishing return at around 15, or if you're able to keep your root zone health perfect and you're able to provide that plant everything it needs in a smaller pot, you could say you could probably accomplish what you could in a 15-gallon in as small as like a 12, or maybe around a 10 is pushing it. But that's the theory there. So when people say don't plant your pot, or put your plant in a pot that's above 7 gallons because it's actually bad for the plant. It's another bit of bro science there where there is no supporting evidence to verify that claim. So those are some of the ones that I had time for tonight. We're coming up on the hour. I think these hours are going quicker and quicker. I've been enjoying this. I've been having a really good time with you guys. I'm seeing pretty much everybody here right now that is here with me every week. I know there's probably not as many people here this week just because it's Easter and probably are spending time with their families and stuff. I'm sure you guys are too. So I appreciate you being here with me. I've been really having a good time with this. At the beginning, I was always a little nervous coming on camera and like all that stuff. It was always like I would have a little bit of like a anxiety before these live streams, but now I look forward to it every week. Like I really do, and it's just even seeing the same names every week. It's really cool, like being here with you guys and talking about this stuff and answering questions. It's like you guys probably sit there and watch it and might ask some questions, and I sit here and talk my face off. But it really is like I don't have any like TV shows or anything that I'm watching these days, so it's like entertainment for me, and I really appreciate you guys stopping by and spending time. Um, yeah, I'll take some questions at the end here if you have any questions, but I'll just gotta wrap up the. There we go. Yeah. Can you give us a hint on when the next drop is, and then have you been posting on the page about it when it's live? I forget. Oh, yeah, yeah. So I'll answer the bottom one first, Trevor. Um, I post every week the YouTube link on the page, and I try to do an at everyone when I post. So like this week when I posted the video, the nutrient promo video, I included in that post the live and the YouTube link, and that was the one. I try not to do too many at everyone's every week. I try that maybe like once a week, at most. So I will try to do an at everyone every week with this link, and then I'll usually remind people like an hour or half an hour before the live on the Facebook group. And I'm gonna start doing that on the Instagram and the Twitter and stuff. But and then Sean asked, can you give us a hint on when the next drop is? What day is it today? Sunday. Probably. We're probably gonna. Well, we may or may not skip this Friday. So what I've talked about last week is you're gonna see the potential for there to be a drop from us every other Friday. Now, just because we dropped the strain, on a Friday does not mean that 2 Fridays later we have another strain ready to go. But if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it on that schedule. So we'll never drop 2 strains, or, usually we won't drop 2 strains in 2 weeks in a row. But So, we didn't drop one this past Friday. Could it could be possible that you guys are gonna see the next one, and I'll give you a hint on the name of it. Um, we have a strain called Dreamcast coming out. You're gonna start to see some that's right, right, yeah, okay, it is gonna be 420, huh? So, yeah, you know what? We're gonna have to do it. I completely forgot about that. You're right, you're right, you're right. Okay, put it in my calendar. We're gonna do 420. There's gonna be a drop. Still here, but my computer froze for a second there. Yeah, we're gonna go 420. We're gonna release it on 420. It's called Dreamcast. It's an excellent strain. We're gonna be posting pictures of it, and we're gonna do something very special for 420. So get ready. Whatever. I don't wanna drop too much information about it, but if you're allocating any money to spend on genetics or cannabis-related stuff, highly recommend waiting to see what we've got ready for you guys on 420 because we're planning to do a big thing then, and just adding a drop to it, I think is gonna blow the roof off of it. So, Dreamcast 420 special, there'll be a live stream, there'll be giveaways, there's gonna be all sorts of fun stuff. I will see you guys there. What day of the week is 420? What is that? Um, 20th is Thursday. Yeah, okay. So then I will see you guys this coming Sunday, and then we will wait until next Thursday, not this coming Thursday, but the Thursday after for the next drop. So, all right, guys, we're already over the hour here. So I love you. Thank you again for stopping by and spending time with me. Joe, have a good night. Joe, Sean, Jason, Trevor, Ian. I think or both Ians are still here. One Ian, Purple. Have a good night, guys. So long. Farewell.